Now in this next lesson, let's go and talk about the span tag and the target attribute. So let's go and check out the documentation here. So I've already opened up the file here, and we can see here that the definition and usage of the span tag is an inline container used to mark up a part of a text or a part of a document. And the span tag is easily styled by CSS or manipulated with JavaScript using the class or ID attribute. So the span tag is much like the div element, but the div is a block element and the span is an inline element. So what I'll be doing here is I'm going to be targeting the h1 element here. I'm going to give it a class text box heading h1. And here I'm going to give it a class name of text box heading span 1, and let me just copy this and go here in our second span here, span 2. Now let's go to our style sheet here. So we have our text box section here. So I'm going to go and target the text box heading h1 and give it some value here. So let me just first add a little bit of padding, 5% from the top, left, right, bottom, and then left. And then I want it to be text aligned, center, and I want to apply some text shadow of 0.4 pixels. If you remember, we already discussed this, so I won't be looking into explaining this anymore. But you can always go back to our text shadow property discussion for you to be able to review the lessons that we have had in explaining the values that we have here. So let me just go and refresh the browser now. So let's check how that will look on our browser. Okay, so we now have our heading 1 having a much bigger font, and it's already centered together with our span element here, which is inside of the h1 inside of our code editor. So I would want to have a separate styling for this. So for us to be able to apply a different styling inside of the same element, we can maximize the use of the span tag, because we can use it as an inline container that will be marking up a part of a text or a part of a document. So let's go and try to apply that. So let's go to our code here and let's go and target the span element, the text box span 2. If you remember, that's the class name that we used in our markup, HTML markup. So let's have here font size. Let's replace the font size here to 1.5 rem. And if we go back to our code editor and refresh this, you would see now that we were able to apply a different styling. However, both of these are considered to be h1 inside of our markup. Now, if we go back to our code editor here, you would see that we have the h1 as the parent element of the two span elements that we have here. So they are considered to be, the content here are considered to be an h1. So I'm hoping you're getting the idea on what the span element can be used for. It can be used to target a specific part of the text or content inside of each of your elements here, so that you can go and specifically give them different forms of styling. Now let's try to go down here, and I would want to go and put a link here using the anchor tag. So I'm going to go and use the anchor tag here, and I'm going to put my name here inside of the anchor tag, and I'm going to link this to our exercises, word challenge solution, and then the resume.html. Now let's try to go and check first if this will work. So let me go down here. We can see now that we have our link here. So we were able to link our main page to our resume here. So we were now able to create more than just one page And let me just go back to our main page here. And now what I want to do here is to not have all of it underlined. So I would want to just go and target the ROD here, the text ROD. So let's try to go and change the decoration, text decoration here. First, let's try to remove the whole text decoration by targeting the anchor element. If you remember, we can do that. So let's go and give this a class name of resume or link resume. Then let's go back up to our text box section, and that's where we will be placing this so that we'll have some reference. And then let's remove the text decoration to none. Now if we try to go and refresh this, we can see we were able to remove the underline decoration here. So now let's go try to change the color here, and then try to just go and have the name rod underlined. So let's go back to our code editor here. Let's go down our markup and then use the span element. So if you remember, we can actually use this to just target a part of a word or a text and then apply some styling for that part. So let's have link resume span here, and then go back to our section here for our styling. So let's have link resume span underline. If you remember, we already talked about this before. Now let's try to go and check on how this will look on our browser. Okay, so there you go. We now have an underline specifically for the text rod. However, all of these are still clickable so that it will be redirecting us to our resume here. Now let's try to go and play around a little bit with this, and I would want to go and change this to red for now. And then here, let's just go and play around with the text shadow. If you remember, we also discussed this before. Let's have 5 pixels here and color green. And if we try to go back to our code editor here, so you would see now that we have a text shadow behind the rod here. And then let's just go and try to add a little bit more of thickness to our text decoration here, and then try to refresh. And there you go. So hopefully that was quite clear. So we can still try to play around with regards to the color combination that we used here, just so that we can emphasize the text rod here. Or we can just go and change this to black. Let's just check if that will look a lot better. So let's go and try to refresh. Let's decrease the pixels here. So play around with it a little bit, guys, so at least you'll have some ways to check out, trial and error. So, but at least we were now able to maximize the span element and use the span element for styling specific parts of our anchor element, the content of our anchor element. The same thing that we did here. The next thing that I want to go and do here, instead of us linking to our resume here and getting redirected and still using this tab here, I would want to go and use the target attribute so that we can go and open a new tab from where the resume can be viewed. So if we try to go and open the target attribute documentation here, it says here it will be specifying where to open the link document. So if we go to the syntax here, you would see that it has these following attributes. So we have the blank, self, parent, top. We can see here that we have the blank value that links the document in a new window or tab. This is what we're going to be using. So we also have here the self, opens the linked document in the same frame as it was clicked, and this is the default. Parent opens the linked document in the parent frame, and top opens the linked document in the full body of the window. So let's just go and try to implement this. So we do have here an example from where we can go and use the target blank attribute here So I'm going to go to our code editor and go to our markup here, go down here, and then place that attribute here, save that, and then go to our document and then refresh and then click this. You would see that it was able to open our resume on a new tab. So we were able to implement our goal for today. Perhaps we can just work on the combination here, because we have to consider how this will be viewed by different individuals, such as those who have visual impairments. So perhaps we can work on that on future lessons. But for now, we were able to achieve our main target, which is to use the target attribute and the span tag. And I just opened here some of the other documentation, so I'm going to be leaving the reference here so that you can try to read more and try to test out the following attribute values here. I just want you to go and test things out on your own and try to see how you can understand how some of these attributes would work on your own. And I want you to be empowered. Again, I want you to test things out and experience firsthand how you will be doing some troubleshooting, testing things out, and how you can go and change values on your own. As I've said before, don't worry if you didn't understand it at first. What really matters here is for you to practice, practice, and practice, as according to Zig Ziglar's tip to mastery. He said 25 ways to mastery will be to practice, 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 practice 25 times. So definitely you will get better. Just try to think of it as if you're going to the gym and you would want to build more muscles. And it's similar to programming, guys. If you would want to go and build your muscles, you have to really lift weights, right? And you practice lifting those weights in a progressive manner. So similar to programming or similar to web design that we're doing here right now, you just need to go and practice and don't stop. Don't think that you cannot do it. You may tell yourself sometimes that I cannot do this. Perhaps I was not born to be someone who can program. But again, it's just that you really need to just go and have the mentality that practicing is what makes you become better in any skill that you would want to acquire. Nobody was born with big muscles in this world, right? Yeah, if you're a baby, you grow up, you want to build your muscles, you need to go to the gym. So it's similar to programming or any skills that you would want to acquire. You will need to go and dedicate your time and practice. And of course, believe in yourself. That's one very important advice that I give my students. You can do this, you can learn, and you can improve. So moving forward here, guys, I just want to go and share to you the reference that I have here for attributes that you can use in HTML. So I have here the list so that you can go through it. So at least you'll have some ideas that there are certain attributes like this, and try to read more about it. So I'm going to leave the link to this to our documentation and references, so at least you can also go and maximize the use of the attribute reference here. So that will be all for this session, and thank you, and see you on our next lesson.